It's I'm no holds barred, so I'm going to tell you kind of where I am. We have a lack of leadership in our country, white and black, if we can use that terminology. I don't like it. So let's kind of go a little bit further. We have a lack of leadership amongst our people, our generation today, irrespective of your beliefs, your race, your orientation, whatever the case may be. We have a lack of good leadership. There's nothing that I see in our country right now that I can say I can emulate towards that and really follow that model.
Leaders and thinkers, movers and shakers, welcome to another exciting episode of what we now call the GLC Podcast.
Wow.
I think last year we had named the podcast the Ultimate Leadership Podcast, which was named after my book, The Ultimate Leadership. But this year we've decided to rebrand, so I'm keen to hear what you guys think. We're now calling it the GLC Podcast. And GLC obviously stands for Global Leadership Consultants, which is the business that we run. But I'm excited. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for tuning in whatever platform you're consuming this content from, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is. We always appreciate and love your feedback. We love hearing from you. We love hearing what you think. And I am excited today because I'm talking to someone that I have really grown to respect by what I've been seeing from social media, from LinkedIn. I don't think anyone I know in this industry has as many posts on LinkedIn as you do. So I'm keen today to talk to Mr. Graeme. You'll correct me here. Lategan.
That's correct. You
Is it
are
correct?
100%. Yes.
Graeme Lategan, and he tells me that's a Dutch surname. So Graeme is a speaker, professional facilitator, learning culture strategist. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that, and management strategist. But I think what you really are is you are, an expert that has built an amazing business that's doing really, really well, and you're adding so much of value to lots of people globally, and you're doing it from Port Elizabeth. That's exciting. So thank you for being here. Yes. Thank you for being here, Graeme. This is really exciting for me, and thank you for honoring the invitation. So let's start from the beginning. Anyone who doesn't know who Graeme is, I found out about you, I was saying, from a mentor of mine that told me to check you out.
Glad you're stalking me.
Yeah, and this was 2 months ago, and I was so blown away by what you're doing, and by your marketing and by putting your stuff out there. So where does all of this come from? How did you start your business? In fact, what do you do?
Yeah,
I've asked you 3 questions.
Let's see if I can remember them, because I'm getting pretty old.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the show, and really and truly, this is a fantastic medium that you've got in terms of speaking globally. I mean, your message gets across, across multiple platforms. Yeah. So to tell you a little bit about my business, started out of necessity. It was almost do or die. And I guess that's what entrepreneurship is about. For me, at least, it's a do or die process. So I left government. I've worked for public service for the best part of 30 odd years. Started way young at the age of 15.
15?
15, 16, kind of. Yeah, just turned into the. I think I was dropped off at the gates of the Roy Hell in Port Elizabeth. I don't know if you know it. It's the North End prison. Do yourself a favor, go and have a look at that setup. Yeah. So that's where my career started. I left school in Standard 8. In the what is it? What's the grade now? I can't
Grade 10.
Grade 10. Oh, there you go. Cool. So, and also through a very tumultuous past, a very, very difficult childhood, a very, very, very complicated adolescent age.
Yeah.
We weren't very wealthy people, very poor, etc. And I lost my parents at a very young age. So coming out of boarding school, I couldn't really cope very well. And from there, I then progressed and went through government service. So I'm very grateful for my, my time in public service. I learned a lot. So some 10 years ago, that's actually when my career started in training. But it wasn't just a wake up one morning kind of thing. I'd done almost informal training on a formal basis and inside government service. So I would take up the challenge to empower my colleagues, etc., with various training programs, etc. But that's actually where it started for me. And I originally started as an assessor and a moderator.
Really?
Yeah, that's actually I saw, when I was at a high level in government, sort of an executive manager, senior manager level, and I realized I'd achieved my ceiling. I mean, I was not going to climb any further. Obviously we go through a lot of change in our country. And then I said to my wife, well, this is the day. Let's start a new business. I had already prepared as an assessor and a moderator, 2 or 3 years before I exited government. And that's how it started to sort of begin to gain momentum. It was phenomenal because I thought, wow, I'm the new consultant on the block.
Wow.
So yeah, that's how it actually
exciting.
started for me. Very, very much so.
Your first client?
My first client was a training company. So I positioned myself as a training provider. I thought, this is an easy job to come into. I'm a brilliant speaker. I had all this confidence, and it wasn't really the case. I realized, I'd bit off a little bit more than what I could chew, because you can't just position yourself as a training company inside the training market. Even 10 years ago, I mean, what was that? 2014, somewhere around there. Yeah, somewhere around there. 13, somewhere around there. So even then it was very complicated, and I hadn't done my homework effectively at the time. So I then took a few steps back and then realized, let me rather start positioning myself as an independent facilitator and trainer for companies that are already established. So that was my entry. And when people contact me today, that's what I advise them. I have a lot of people wanting to start their own training company. And we can talk about that. It's very, 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 very complex and very sort of volatile in today's times. So I position myself as an assessor, moderator, come freelance, independent trainer with already established training companies. That worked for me. 3 or 4 clients, if I can mention their names, it was People Solutions at the time.
Are they based in P? Or?
No, some are mostly based in Joburg and Cape Town. And then a couple of Sialoba, in East London. Sorry, not East London, in Port Elizabeth. Yes, in Koberg at the time. That's before we changed our name. Okay, so they started to use me on what we call learnerships. Wide Horizon.
I've heard.
Wide Horizon, fantastic organization. Pat Fourie runs that outfit. So they gave me the break. They gave me the break. They gave me small little training courses to present, etc. And I started to craft my skill there. But I wanted more. And that's how it went.
That's so exciting, because for me it was quite the opposite. Yeah. And I think that has, to a certain extent, has been why I think my business hasn't grown to its fullest potential, because I started out as a training provider, not as an independent.
It's amazing. It's a big step.
It was very difficult. In fact, it is still a bit difficult. So I'm curious to know for you how you got to sort of realize, and how you got to that decision of saying, I must actually start out as an independent.
It's an important question. At the time I was kind of well trained as a manager. The time that I spent in public service really crafted my skill, wrong or right. Bad or good for that matter. And it crafted my understanding of markets and industry, etc., to some degree. Now, that's going to sound weird. You're going to ask me, how does government teach you how to be a business person? But I think through my interaction with stakeholders, etc., I could read, and I had a lot of opportunities to speak on conferences, etc., during my time in government service. So that kind of gave me an
for free.
Open, well, of course. I mean, you're getting paid a salary. There's no.
But I mean, your speaking wasn't something you're doing on the side.
No, not at all. Okay. No. When you're working in public service or in government, you may only hold that particular post unless you declare your interest, of course, which you don't have the time for at senior management level. But so I think when I saw that I was not getting success as a training company in terms of the Port Elizabeth sector. You know, in PE, it's a very difficult market to launch a business because everything sits in Johannesburg and Durban and Cape Town for that matter. And that's a difficult market. And I didn't want to relocate back there. You know, I was...
Why not?
No, it's just not for me. And my wife, you know, Charmaine and I, we constantly argue about this. We're living at the coast. You never go to the beach. You know, and I thought to myself, I don't care. I don't care about that. You know, I want to know that the ocean is there. But you know, that being said, I think enough. That's enough for me. That freedom of being able to, if I can fly, I can spread my wings and like sort of sail over the ocean. But I realized I wasn't getting any. Can I say, inroads into being a training provider. I couldn't position my company effectively at the time. And the reason why that was the case is because there were so many established training companies here already. So automatically, when you start going into doing marketing, which was a brand new thing for me, brand positioning and sales, heaven above. I mean, I'm not a salesperson by any stretch of the imagination. But I had to walk into companies on a cold call. I would perhaps, you know, come to you and, you know, I'd say to you, hey, would you like to see my products that I've got, which I never had at the time, by the way. So that was phenomenal. And then I realized, wait, take a step back and learn the industry as an independent kind of trainer for them. You know, craft your skill there, learn how to train, actually. How I was doing it for free, perhaps, you know, with my colleagues in government, etc., and in municipalities, was completely different to what you do if you're running your own training company.
Wow, that is so exciting. And I think, you know, I don't know you that well, but from what I see, I think you're doing an amazing job. I think you've built a solid brand.
Thank you.
A solid global brand, which is what I'd like to maybe get into a bit later on. But you know, it's not an easy industry. You know, you know PE better than me. I've only been in PE for like 10 years. You know, the Eastern Cape. So what are some of the mistakes that you have made in your business? In fact, what were some of the mistakes that you were making at that time when you were starting out? And how would you contrast them to the mistakes that you are making now, if you're making any mistakes?
It's a brilliant question because I teach, don't dwell on your mistakes.
Yeah.
They are a learning curve for you. More than mistakes, maybe demotivating moments, maybe spaces where I've really felt dejected, disengaged, demotivated, you know, and we can use all the specific analogies. And I've suffered, you know, when we say you think twice about something, I've thought 30 or 40 or 50 times about specific decisions in my career. But I've stayed the course. And at the end of the day, I guess we can use all the motivational quotes that are out there, you know, and we can kind of say, look, if something goes wrong, get back up on the horse and ride again. And, you know, you never forget how to ride a bicycle and whatnot, all that kind of methodology. But for me, the mistakes that I started out with was underestimating the gravity of what it takes to run your own company.
Wow.
That shocked me. Yeah, but you must also remember, I could not go back to anything. You know, yes, we are dealing with lots of issues in our country where we've got to redress the past, etc. So it's a competitive environment. You know what I'm saying? And I support the context, but it means that if you make a choice, you've got to go with that, unless it really failed. And I must be honest. Yeah. I applied for a few positions here and there. You know, I actually went back into a particular company as a training manager. I learned some work there. But the mistakes I made was underestimating the gravity of running your own company. Number two, not understanding what it takes in terms of marketing. I had no marketing skills.
Okay.
So I had to learn those particular skills, and I did not know how to market. I learned how to be creative. In other words, design my own adverts, design my own social media marketing campaigns, for that matter. No one could help because I did not have the money. The other mistake I made is I didn't deal wisely with my finances. Yeah, I made a lot of I made a lot of mistakes with my financial ability at the time. You know, I had money obviously coming out of public service, but I used it for a whole bunch of other things.
What are those things?
So obviously, we bought a
buy
car.
a boat.
I got into the SUV markets, as opposed to staying with that little tiny, small little car that you kind of had. I mean, I had a little Bucky at the time.
Yeah.
And then, this big SUV, I wanted that image. And that sort of got to me. I spent a lot of money on my house because at the time, remember, I had a housing subsidy and I had a fixed salary coming in every month. And so I could pay my bond, I could pay everything else. And that sort of stopped quite immediately. So I used a lot of my finances for the wrong, activities or processes in my business. I used it to kind of upgrade my house and fix my garage and put a fence around and that kind of stuff.
I'm sure your wife was very happy with it.
Well, look, I mean, she just goes with the flow kind of thing. But we are equally financially challenged in many ways. But that being said, so if I can cap it down to two things, I underestimated the market in terms of I did not do enough research. I did not really kind of position myself correctly in the first place. 4, 5, 6 months into my career, I was not earning a salary, not making money. So I had to kind of, really run around and find an entry. Thank heavens, some people gave me an opportunity. And then, of course, the way you have money. So if you've got capital, use it wisely, number one. If you are going to start your organization or a company, do your research. That's entrepreneurship one-on-one. Our institutions teach us that. Number three was the ability to actually adapt to working from home. So when COVID hit, I had no problem because I was already positioned you are. We've been positioned. Yeah. So that was very difficult for me to kind of find discipline to do that. Today it's easy. I mean, I'm going to my office, which is like 5 steps away, and I stay there. My wife has to shout, "Graeme, come back and have some lunch," or something like that. And, and I say, "I'm online," kind of thing. So those were the mistakes I made. I also, I think if in generality, mistakes that I made for me was, I think I should have done it earlier in my life. The key to unemployment in South Africa, and I think any country, is entrepreneurship and to work for yourself. We ain't going to get it right in here. So that's kind of where I am. Yeah. Of course, there were a lot of other mistakes, which are socially unacceptable.
How long did it take you to land your first big gig?
I would say it took me the best part of, if I can go back that far, and it seems like eons ago. I think it took me about 14 months.
14 months.
14 or 15 months, somewhere around there. I had landed a lot of moderation and assessment opportunities, because I was already positioned that. So I had the expertise in terms of I could mark papers. But my first best training gig came from a training provider that gave me a year-long contract.
Wow.
But remember now, year-long contracts amount to 3 or 4, 5 days a month that you would be busy. So that was great. I mean, when I earned 10,000 Rand in one day, I thought, wow, I've arrived. Kind of, I said to my wife, look, this is my tax deduction that I've earned here. But so it took me about 14 months. But I must be honest, before that, I was well known. I was well positioned. A lot of people knew me. I had established a kind of, I wouldn't say following, but I'd established a reputation from my law enforcement and policing and traffic days. As a known guy, so I was pretty well respected.
Wow.
Not always liked, but pretty well respected in the industry. So I had people that already started to post me out, and send me across platforms. So that was great.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
What would I'm sure you've had a lot of time to reflect and to think and to plan, and what would be the best ingredients for a person in your field doing what you're doing in the Eastern Cape? I want us to look at the Eastern Cape, because a lot of people are they're moving, and you deliberately chose not to move.
100%, yeah.
And I respect that decision so much. So in fact, let me ask it this way: a person starting out in your industry today,
correct?
What advice would you give that person? What would you say to that person?
It's It's a lot of questions in there.
Yeah, I know. I'm like that.
But that's fine. Let's see if I can kind of recap that and find you and put down some anchors. I love the Eastern Cape. Make no mistake. And I'm not saying that to impress upon anybody and say to them, you must choose me now because I'm kind of the go-to guy in Eastern Cape. That's not the case. I love the Eastern Cape. So I was away from the Eastern Cape for the best part of 5 years in the Northwest Province, made some phenomenal friends. I finished my government career there, if I can kind of depart from there. So for me, when I woke up and I saw lands of millies and sunflowers, it depressed me beyond your wildest.
What was that?
That's the Northwest Province. That's what they do there, You have these massive house-sized combines driving down thousands and thousands of meters of dusty red soil. And I just could not cope. So I began to switch off from a career point of view. I became laxy-daisy. I became a bad manager. I really did. I relied too much on the people around me. I relied on my knowledge and brains and kind of experience. But it sort of landed me in hot water. When I exited the Northwest area, which is it's a culture on its own, if I can use that. I came back to Eastern Cape. I saw trees and mountains and green and lusciousness. And the ocean, of course. So I love the Eastern Cape. Not the best place to start a business. By no stretch of the imagination. And the reason for that is because most companies in the Eastern Cape, for that matter, unless they are owner-driven businesses, like mechanic workshops and, and electrical shops and plumbing and things like that, are centralized or being decentralized. So there's a branch here that belongs to Joburg.
Yeah.
There's a branch here that belongs to Cape Town, so to speak, and they can't make decisions. So if I can approach you as the manager, let's say I'm going to use a particular hardware store.
Yeah.
You're not going to make the decision. It has to go through the centralized HR. That frustrated me. So if I can give advice for somebody starting in the Eastern Cape, think twice. Although we want to bring business here, yes, no? For me, if I can kind of sort of come in at the back end of your questions, I would like to advise people, don't leave the Eastern Cape just to chase money. I've been told often that if I was in the Johannesburg area or perhaps even Cape Town, I could be a multi-millionaire with what I've already have and kind of the positioning I have with my business. I'd love to be a millionaire. But it's not what I'm chasing.
Sure.
So you have to understand the generations. A younger generation will leave and they'll go and chase business in those areas. And rightfully so, because today's survival is very economically challenged. And at the end of the day, if you are sort of middle-aged and you've got a family and you've got a setup here, kind of that way, you would still try to be employed in this market. Difficult to say the least. To start a business, I would say try it out, do your research, check the industry, do your market research, go and find out if you can't start a hairdressing business, for instance, if there's 25 hairdressers in the same street. There's something wrong with that business plan coming a mile off. And you don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand that.
Yeah.
But I would like to see our young entrepreneurs stay. Much like our sportsmen. Our sportsmen leave our franchises and they go somewhere else. But what are they chasing? Money. And if you can distance yourself from having money and material things to satisfy you and look for the work-life balance, I know that's a discussion on its own, but find that harmony where you just are content, that helped me.
Wow.
Is to be content with what I have. Yes, there's challenges. It's a struggle. The struggle is real, but that's how
the struggle is real.
The struggle is real, Water, I don't want to off the point, but my colleagues, I've sent some of my trainers to Swaziland this week. I've sent a few to Joburg. We've done some work sort of out of town, and I had to do work here locally for an international client. And everybody's saying it's raining around us. We're not getting any rain. So I don't know what it is about P that we're here for, but that's where we are.
Wow. I think you've got a question that you wanted to ask.
Yes.
I actually wanted to ask, because you said it took you about 14 months to sort of land your biggest gig. Did you have a team at the time, or was it just you? Because you as you speak, you're coming across as a very charismatic person.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, appreciate that.
People feed off energy.
They do.
Yes.
They do. And I've trained a lot of people that have actually kind of said the same thing. So I really appreciate the feedback. One-man show. That was it. My wife and I. If it wasn't, I speak about my wife, and that's not to get the mixed grill that I'm looking for tonight.
But she'll make it anyway.
Hopefully she'll make that. But the point I'm making is that it was her and I. It's always been that way, for the past 14, 15 years that we married, and the 27 odd years that we've been together. If I've made a decision, I've said, look, that's where I'm going. She'll say, yeah, let's move on. Of course, there's times when we have to kind of have that discussion, but it was me alone. It was the two of us just taking a chance. And then, of course, there was the fact that I'd already had some kind of a high network base in terms of not business, but people that could pass me on, a name. So that did count a little bit. But in essence, it was, I think it was just cold turkey. Off you go. It's just alone. I had no team. I mean, I had no accounting experience. I didn't even know what accounting was. I understand the concept. We ran budgets for millions and millions of rands. But you had to have your own marketing. You had to have your own HR. You had to have your own kind of work ethics and all sorts of things that came into play.
Yeah.
Wasn't easy. Wasn't easy.
So then after that, when did you start realizing that I now need a team? Because now you're speaking of, you've got some guys in Swaziland, you've got some guys in, and especially, we're looking at COVID now. Back then, people were laying off a lot of people, and it's like you mentioned in the beginning, training is a very, very volatile industry.
Very volatile, very uncertain industry.
Yes, very uncertain. So did you reach a point where you were like, it can't be a one-man show anymore now? I actually need some help.
Yeah, it's an interesting question.
I know why I was asking that.
Perhaps you're a one-man show yourself. There's nothing wrong with it. And people kind of, they lift their eyebrows when we say, like, we're a one-man show. Perhaps that's not politically correct anymore, but that's beside the point. I think I wanted to succeed and fail on my own at the time. So I didn't want to drag anybody down with me. So and that's what happens. And I had no capital. I mean, I was in kind of debt at the time. Not that we've got out of it, but if you understand what happens. So I didn't want to take on the staff component. The last thing I needed at that time was to worry about HR problems.
Yeah.
Because that has occurred to me as I've grown my team, by the way. Now I'm not focusing on my passion. I'm now focusing on the kind of logistics in an organization that I don't want to do.
Yeah.
But that has to happen. So when did I start realizing? I would say probably around the third or fourth year, I started to collaborate. Yeah, I started to collaborate with some phenomenal trainers in the industry. One of my colleagues, like I mentioned, Dr. Charles Cotter, he kind of took me under his wing for a specific period, and we started to collaborate. So he would give me feed-off opportunities if he was double booked or something like that, you know what I mean? And I had some other opportunities with Pat Free from Wide Horizon and things like that. Then I started to become double booked, which was phenomenal. I mean, I said to my wife at the time, I said, well, we're only working for 22 days in the month, if you're lucky. So you can only earn that much amount of money in those days. You have to expand. And it was my nightmare. It was a fear. I remember breaking out in cold sweat because I did not want to take on staff. Entrepreneurship and resources is two perfect storms, if you understand where I'm coming from. And if you combine them together, it can be horrendous. So the point I'm making is that when I started to get a client that would say, Graeme, we would like to hire you on, let's say, the 15th to the 18th, I would kind of convince them that I'm not available, but I've got a phenomenal colleague in the industry, you understand? Yeah. And they can also run the business. It didn't always work, and it still doesn't. But when they do trust me, I use some of what I call consultant contractors. So I would hire you, for instance, to run a training program for me if I'm otherwise engaged, and so forth and so forth. That drove a passive income for me. So I would take an overriding commission on that, or I'd run an admin fee on that. So if I'm hiring you for, let's say, 25,000 a day, I'd pay you a set fee out of that, etc. And it's worked very well for me. Wow. But there are some instances when I don't do that. I just pass on the business because I believe in paying it forward. So that has worked very well. And we've created this this kind of, I wouldn't say it's a following, but this aura about the abundance mindset. So I gave away a lot of business.
Wow.
Otherwise, that I could have had myself. But because my clients wouldn't wait at the time, I had to unfortunately pass it on. But it's come back to me. I've lost a lot of, by the way, many of those trainers have moved on to other assignments. You understand? And they've done phenomenally well for themselves. I've introduced so many people that were otherwise financially struggling going into COVID, or, you know, even into 2018-19 market we were going through multiple recessions. They moved on to greater and bigger things. I think I can count maybe 15 or 20 of other trainers that have established their businesses now. Now they make my competitors.
Wow, man.
So that's ironic.
No, that's exciting. I think that's such an important question, because I made tons of mistakes in hiring the wrong people at
I've
times.
done it as well.
You know, that stress of having to pay. I think last year, January, I was stressing about paying 8 people, each month. And
people don't understand. You don't sleep.
Yeah, that's
you understand. I now have expanded my business after the COVID-19 pandemic, and what we've done is I've taken on 3 or 4 business managers.
I've seen that.
You've seen that. So, but I've unfortunately had to introduce them to the concept of no work, no pay.
Okay. How does that work?
And that's an interesting question. So I've had to sort of like sell them on the concept that, listen, stick with me and you'll go places. But that being said, they work on a contract basis. They're freelancers, and they work on a commission structure. So if they put, as we call, bums in the seats, so they get an overriding commission. But I also use them in other areas as well, like 1 or 2 of them now. I can think of one of my business managers, Gisela, has launched her own marketing company now. My other business manager, Hilton, is doing very well in terms of the public sector, you understand, where he's trying to garner that. That's a challenge all on its own. But they when they're hot, they do well for themselves. So, yeah.
Does the arrangement work?
It works very well. For instance, it's very difficult. For instance, one of my business managers, Jackie, is kind of just launching her career now into this industry, but it comes from a phenomenal sales past. You know, she had great.
She manages your global.
Well, Gisela manages my global market. Jackie manages my national market, and then Hilton manages my national and regional market.
Wow.
So what they then do is they look for business in those areas. 2023 has been a difficult start. I don't know if you have experienced that. So we haven't really put through a lot of success. But that being said, I understand we changed. I call it the recession gear. We pushed it up a notch, kind of thing. So people are scared to spend. Coming out of 2020, I was still going at it alone myself. I did very well in 2020, by the way.
Wow.
I did very well. I lost income. I had no income for 5 months, 6 months. I had not a cent coming in.
In 2020?
In 2020. I mean, in March, I was set for trips to the USA. I was set for trips to the Middle East and parts of Europe. I still want to go to Australia. That's beside the point. I think they kind of know it all already because they're first there. So that is the case. But and it was all cancelled. I lost it. I went into a panic. I thought, this is at the end of my life, and my wife works with me in the business, so we work together. So it's a wake up call. But I was agile. I was responsive. I used a new word called adaptagility. I don't know that. Adaptagility. Don't you? Yeah.
Adaptagility.
Okay. It belongs to me.
You must trademark it.
I'm commissioning Oxford to try and put that in the dictionary. I've had no luck yet, but
really,
I'm trying. So I'm patent pending.
Oh, that's good.
Understand. But that being said, it's. I think I've done away with that concept of trial and error. I've adopted the theory of, or shall I say, the reality of do or die. I can't wait for it. I have to do it. I've got to try it. Nothing's going to come to me. I have to go and find it. You can't have a wonderful product and then expect that it's going to sell itself. You've got to tell people about that. You've got to show them what it does. And you've got to sell yourself as well. Not easy. You've got to be vulnerable. You've got to put yourself out there. And that's kind of what happened to me in 2020. Phenomenal changes. I went online. I started to run programs, on this. I learned these formats now that we are busy with.
Yeah.
Lighting. I didn't know lighting was an issue. I thought you just put the light down and it works kind of thing, So it was a phenomenal wake up call. It was a scary time. And then, of course, I got COVID in 2021. And how I survived that. My wife and I were very, very sick. I was in hospital.
Sure.
So 2020 was great for me. In the end, 21 was phenomenal, and 22 was exceptional. 23 is proving very difficult. But that's because we are trying new things, bring on new staff, try and introduce. And they all left comfortable jobs, by the way. How's that for us?
Sure. It's a lot of pressure.
It's major pressure. I mean, yeah. And then to go back in the job market, if they say to me after 4 months, "Hey, Graeme, it's not working," I'm going to say to them, "You'll be with me for a few more months." So I've kind of imparted the concept of it's a do or die for you too, but I leave them to do their own thing. I remember working in an industry that was 9 to 5, and you had to be there. And if you didn't clock in at 8 o'clock, you'd be in trouble, and there'd be a disciplinary inquiry. And I was one of those managers that did that. If you're late for work, I'm going to charge you. Such a pathetic way of managing an organization. It's necessary sometimes, but not part of your DNA.
Yeah. I am interested to know your thoughts on leadership and sales. You're standing in front of people. By the way, for those of you who don't know, as I said in the beginning, I think Graeme does a lot of gigs internationally. I was seeing some of your pictures that you were posting of stuff that you were doing in Qatar, I think.
Yes, Qatar, that's India, parts of the Philippines, other parts.
That's amazing. So you're standing in front of people, you're doing a session on leadership. How do you approach that? What do you say?
Well, first and foremost, you must understand you've got to be very at ease and in your comfort zone with your resources. Your physical resources around you, like you've got a studio here, kind of run the same thing. I had to set that up. How do I do it? I think, again, with that adaptable, I look at myself as an actor. When I'm training online, I'm an actor because do you remember when we first went online? We all had the cameras going and you couldn't wait to see yourself. And then eventually we had our pets in our hands and the other one, and they used to do funny dress-ups and half the people never had sort of pants on the bottom. And then they'd mistakenly get up and walk around in their underwear.
She still does it.
Oh, no, that is a phenomenal way of kind of. Then we got tired of it. The reset didn't last long enough, and we sort of now are switching our cameras off. So I find that very difficult. Online and using digital resources, it is not as easy as what it looks. You have to perform. You have to act. You have to laugh at your own jokes. You've got to
laugh at your own jokes.
If you make a funny statement and you will sort of like pump in a little slinger of a laugh, kind of thing. You're hoping that everybody is also smiling at the end there. Otherwise, you really look like an idiot. And then it's how you speak, your voice, your tonality. So that for me was a learning curve. It still is today. So I'm very careful. And then you must remember I work across multiple cultures, vast differences in belief systems and conceptualizations and constructs, and they think differently. You've got to be careful what your slideshow looks like. You cannot be offensive in certain cultures. You've got to be very careful of that. And it's a minefield game. How do I do it in other respects? You've got to love it. I preferred online training in many respects, but I still love the face-to-face because I can pull the energy out of people. My colleague Charles Cotter often says to me, I come with the kind of reality and it's fact-driven, and it's research-based. You come with the emotional context and there's place for both. There's a business case for both. But you asked about leadership and sales. Remember, Lou, the two concepts are completely different. Leadership, I'm currently doing my PhD. I'm very, very privileged to be. Thank you. I'm very privileged to be going through that stage. It's a nightmare as well, and no easy task, specifically at my age. And I'm trying to debunk all old styles and theories of management and leadership. And I'm also saying that we should stop demonizing one over the other. We pedestal leaders and we kind of break down managers and we say they are, very strict people and they're just on systems, and that's not the case. So I'm bringing the two concepts together. Sales and leadership go very well together, but so does marketing and leadership. So does HR and leadership. You understand? They have their own path, they have their own trajectory, and there are certain tasks and things inside those that you must kind of learn to be able to manage.
This is something that I saw on your Facebook.
Yeah.
You were saying organizations must unlearn that crisis management is a bad thing.
Yes.
A crisis is nothing but fitness training to prepare managers and leaders to handle, function, and deliver in volatile, uncertain, and complex
That's correct.
times.
Yes. Yeah.
Sounds like a mouthful.
It
Unpack that for us. What do you say?
Well, it's one of my quotes. Okay. And thanks for reminding me. Obviously, it's come with the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic. But I'm saying there that disruption is not a new thing to the human race.
Yeah.
I mean, we've gone through world wars and genocides and our own history and our own path as a dysfunctional country. So I believe that we've really and truly we need to stop. Can I say? Almost, there's a word that I'm looking for here where we over-exaggerating disruptions. When we came out of lockdown, another disrupt. We thought, oh, fantastic, it's all downhill from here. And then the war in Ukraine hit, some idiot decided to bomb somebody else kind of thing. So disruption is not new. What we are teaching managers in industries to be proactive. And leaders for that matter. We're teaching our students at school, we're teaching young minds to be proactive. That's a good thing. Would you agree? I mean, it's not a bad thing. We use reaction as an evil tone, and that's where I've got a problem with management leadership. Reaction should be part of your DNA as a manager and a leader, because nothing goes the way you originally always. You know this. I mean, this is not something new. And there are good days in management and leadership, and then there are bad days. We haven't trained our people to handle bad days when things go wrong. So those are termed crisis, and I'm saying get crisis fit. Teach our managers.
I like that.
Yeah.
Get crisis fit.
Crisis fit.
Wow.
Yeah. Remember, there's a whole bunch of constructs when it comes to crisis. Crisis in terms of disasters, etc. That's a different thing. I'm talking inside the day-to-day functions.
Yes.
I'm your manager, I'm your boss today, and you come in and you've lost a loved one. Something's gone wrong in your life. There's a speed bump in your way now. That's a crisis. You understand? I've got to learn how to adapt to you now. You're not adapting to me. That's where I'm coming from in terms of crisis. I'm positioning management and leadership to be one and the same thing with different tasks, but they are adaptable. So such thing as transformation.
One and the same thing with different tasks.
Different tasks, different entry points, different touch points. Can we call it that? If you say to me, a manager is, what do they normally say? The manager, he controls, the leader inspires. Can we use that as different? I really think that's a lot of nonsense. And I'm sure because you guys come from the leadership institute, you've done this before. A manager can also inspire.
Yeah.
You understand? It's just a matter of changing the caps.
Yeah.
So we've got to stop these memes, man.
Yeah.
You know, these too many memes.
I saw something about that. You had a meme and
can you see? I had that story. So stop these silly memes. You know, there's no such thing as a boss. Boss is not the opposite of a leader. Or there's a good leader and a bad leader. There's a good manager and a bad manager. It's not a manager and a boss or a leader and a boss. Those concepts don't exist.
But wouldn't you say that some people, there are some people that are managers that cannot lead?
100%. Yes. And then there are leaders that can't manage.
Yeah.
So we almost we treat leadership as a godlike kind of process, you know, or a skill. Leaders are not born, contrary to popular belief. They are kind of they evolve through environment and experience, and they either go on the wrong path or the good path. I mean, let's be honest. Let's name one or two good leaders in our country. Can we? Okay, very few. The prominent ones. Okay, so I think on your one hand, you might get to 5 if you're lucky. And everybody that we see as leaders of industry, big industry, we've been conditioned that they failed. They haven't succeeded. But in retrospect, they've actually managed the industries. I mean, we can use a few industries, and we don't want to kind of mention names right now. Unless you're happy to, I'm happy to go there. Yeah. But I'm just wanting to say that management and leadership are, for me, one and the same thing. They have different tasks. At the end of the day, they can be bad, they can be good. Depends on your environment and your experience and who's there to help you, to build you, to kind of channel you, you know, to drive that thought process.
No, definitely. I'm curious to know what you think about where we are as a country.
Interesting question.
And I think this is where we can sort of finish off the conversation and what your thoughts are on our past and where we are now as a country. Because I meet a lot of people that are in business, particularly white people that are so anti-BBBEE, you know, I don't want us to go there, but
well, it's a good conversation to have.
And I've often wondered. I always try and put myself in the shoe of the other person, like looking at it from your seat, looking at it from your view and what some of these politicians are saying about white people in South Africa, all of that. What are your thoughts?
Don't have enough leadership. And then we have a shortage of good leadership in South Africa. And then our abilities to self-manage and self-regulate. We constantly are bombarded with corruption and failure and failure and failure. Everything seems to fail in South Africa. When it doesn't rain, it's failing. You know what I'm saying? We're blaming the weather already, kind of thing. I think we need to stop talking about the differences between us. The way to get rid of the concept of BE and affirmative action and all that kind of stuff is stop talking about it. When we stop talking about it and we trust the process and we trust that businesses will do the right thing, then I think we'll grow. Unfortunately, unless we get the leadership right, where we say that employment equity is a good thing for business, diversity is a healthy thing for business. It shows your organizational culture. I also I'm often affected by broad-based economic empowerment as a manager and owner of my business. I'm often, but I move on. I can't dwell on it, because if I dwell on it and throw my toys on the cot and run to social media and say how bad BE is and how bad this is, where am I going? What message am I sending to people? And I'm not saying that because I'm live with you and on this session. It's a fact. You can look at my trend and you'll see that. I don't support the concept of having a problem with it. You must embrace it. Change, do something different. Embrace those concepts and it'll work for you. I have eaten in the midst of this policy and process. I'm as fat as pigs. So I haven't gone hungry. I'm not on the street, but that's the problem. Everybody throws their hands in there, specifically white people, with due respect. We tend to look at things too negatively in terms of its intention, of its connotation. Rather look at its intention and work around that. And you can't be dishonest. You must be ethical and moral. The problem is our people that are applying those theories. Those same people that are saying you must do this in terms of redress, etc., are the same people that are corrupt and not really doing anything for the people. Let's be honest. I mean, what has it really done for us in our country other than continue to divide? But I hear where you're coming from. It's you at the moment, embrace it and work with it. Is what I'm saying to business. If every white person started a company in South Africa and said, well, my challenges are BE, I'm going to say to them, well, then you need to look at me. They are my challenges. Why do you then, that same person puts a mem, me and mems.
What's with you and me?
on Facebook or social media, or LinkedIn, and they say, "Oh, you got to be positive about this." They wake up in the morning with this epiphany, and they throw this positive thought out, and this religious thoughts out, etc. And they kind of position themselves as this wonderful, positive person, but way down the line, that's not really who they are. Back at the bar, kind of thing. It's a challenge. Work around it.
How do we fix our country? What can we do as people? I mean, we're going into 2024 now, it's elections and stuff like that. Some people will say, but that has nothing to do with entrepreneurship and all of that. And I would argue it impacts
very much
how you run your business. It impacts, the level of crime in your community and all of these other things, and the policies and the legislation that impacts your business in the long run. These BBBEE stuff, there's some 400 odd politicians in parliament that sit and that come up with these policies that affect all of us. So
True.
What do we do? And maybe just think about this one, because I don't know. What do we say? I mean, I've got a 3-year-old boy.
Yes.
And he's growing up, and one of the first words he learned as a 3-year-old is load shedding.
Load shedding.
That's not normal.
I'm laughing at the concept, but it's scary.
That's not normal. So, I'm sure you've thought about this. So what do you say? Because I also look at, my small stage, and whenever I'm speaking to people as not just a platform to deliver what I'm being paid to do, but also as a platform to inspire people so that people contribute wherever they are. So how can we fix the mess that we're in? What do you think?
Oh, that's a mouthful, and it's on a personal note. Many people in South Africa are not in thriving mode. They're in survival mode. Makes sense?
Yeah.
We need to build a South Africa for them. In fact, we need to build an Africa that can thrive, and we've got the skills.
An Africa that can thrive.
An Africa that can thrive. And it's my own summation, so I haven't read that anywhere. We need to build, because at the end of the day, we need to extend our ability to use our skills, our brains, our resources. We've got it. We're kind of farming everything out, It's going to other countries that then own our airports and our utilities, etc. And we can talk all day about that. But the point I'm trying to get at is we need to change our mindset in terms of having to survive to thrive. In order for that to happen, the way government manages us and leads us needs to change. Any political party, and I'm not a politician by any stretch of the imagination, I do clash a lot with them. But any politician by any stretch of the imagination, no matter what party you're on, can they honestly say today that they are going to bring stability to our country in the next 2 to 3, 4 years? I no longer talk about 5, 10 years, 20, 30 strategies. I can't think that way.
Yeah.
It's a VUCA world. Volatile. It's a VUCA world.
VUCA?
Yes.
Is that a word?
Yes, it's a military term from the United States, by the way, that apply that to their military. So what they did is they take young people out of schools, and they train them to be killers, soldiers. Okay, and they drop them into the middle of Iraq, and they've got to kind of adapt. They've got to kind of respond. Otherwise, they're dead. Now, think of this. Where does entrepreneurship start? It starts at a young age. And many countries that are successful today in their economies, go and look at them where they apply that methodology right at the bottom. So we're teaching our children to be parrots. We're teaching them to kind of say, learn this. At school, we say, no, don't do this. You must do this. Put your hand here. Be quiet. Walk with. You know what I mean? We're not teaching them to be emotionally intelligent, to deal with conflict. We've got a large component of bullying at schools. Sexual harassment and bullying now is all the rage in training for corporates. We shouldn't be training that at corporates. We should be doing that at the lower levels. It's too late. A lot of people will ridicule the statement. But that being said, you need to change the mindset from survival to thrive. Change the leadership and how they lead and how they manage. And we need governance and ethical values to come back into our industry. You can't teach a 50, 60-year-old politician how to be ethical. They should have applied that way back when they were like coming through the ranks, of that. So that's what's lacking. And then let's see what I think that they've got the job too long. I think they're in it too long. 4 years is too long for me. But we can't always go through elections and changes. I get that it's a logistical nightmare. But so much is going wrong.
Oh, that's interesting. So you're saying we must shorten that 4 or 5 year period?
I think we should shorten the period, everything. You know, we government got it right, certainly after 1994. Instead of having previously advantaged people in posts for like ever, you know, they shortened the term to 5 years. They've now gone down to 3 years to kind of keep these people in posts. If they don't perform, they're out there. But it shouldn't take you 3 years to find out if somebody performs. That's the problem. So the way we hire in business, it's another issue. The way we recruit, the way we attract talent, the kind of people we're bringing into our companies is also the reason why we're struggling to be a performance or a high performance country in many respects. Make no mistake, we're doing a lot of things right. There's a lot of things going very well in our country. You know, and I know you're going to ask me the next question. What? I think we're looking at trying to. Can we take learnerships, etc., and education as an example? We're not approaching education effectively at schools. Is my opinion and my viewpoint, and I'm sure there's stats to prove that. I don't have them right now, but we are trying to redress that at corporate level. So when a youngster comes out of school, for instance, they would now cannot find work because unemployment is too high. So now everybody is expecting the government to kind of come up with employment thinking and kind of opportunities. That's not fair. Corporate must do its part. So that's what the government said. Okay, corporate, contribute to the skills levy. And therefore we'll put you people in for a year or 2 years experience and we'll give them a qualification. However, when they come out there, they still can't find work. So the other thing that we've got to start changing is this dependency upon government. This dependency.
That's a big
mindset.
thing. No,
That's a big thing.
That's a big thing.
Our people are too dependent and too parrot-driven. So for me, it's the type of people you hire, the type of, and when I say the type, let's say the caliber of person that you hire. And the trust that we have in one another. There's a lack of trust and transparency in public service. At the moment, if load shedding, if they said to me today, you've got stage 8 load shedding, I'm going to believe that. You understand? If they told me, oh, it's stage 2, you know, we say, oh God, it's still load shedding kind of thing. You know what I mean? You're still negative mind. You should celebrate that we got load 2. So it's a difficult question.
No, it is. But no, man, thank you so much for this conversation.
Fantastic.
I think, again, I think you're doing so well. And I know that I've never sat in any of your trainings, but I know certainly from hearing you speak now that there are a lot of people that you're impacting. And I really, really wish you and your business and
thank you very
what
much.
you're doing all of the best. 2 or 3 more things on a lighter note. Let's look at your morning routine.
Yeah.
Do you have a routine? What do you do in the mornings?
It's not a difficult question. I struggle with sleep because my brain just doesn't switch off. But at that, my morning routine is first things first. We kind of, give thanks and we're very grateful for the day, another day of being alive. And then we start the routine with our animals.
So what is that, prayer or?
Yeah, kind of quiet time, prayer time, depends on,
So you're Christian?
I'm not religious.
Okay.
By no stretch. I don't really believe in religion. I believe in a personal relationship with whoever you believe is your creator.
Okay.
Is kind of my take on. But I spend a lot of time in terms of with the Lord Jesus Christ as my go-to inspiration. So I do spend. That's my belief system. So I do spend time in that. But at the same time, we have a cup of tea, my wife and I, and we reflect what's going to happen on, and we spend time with the animals and feed them rusks, and I don't know.
Really?
Kind of thing. And then it's the rabbits and the birds and all sorts of things. So, and then morning, I have a shower, get into the office, and
What time is that?
I'm normally up at about 5:30, 5:30, 5:15, 6, give or take, kind of my internal alarm clock. We make use of load shedding and we exercise during load shedding.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so especially if it's the middle of the day. Of course, if it's morning routine or late afternoon, we can't do that. So I've done a few posts where I say, make the best of this, get some exercise. Yeah. That's not quite reflecting yet. But that's the idea.
What time do you knock off usually?
I don't. And people are going to say, but Graeme, you're contradicting yourself. my switch off routine depends on the demands of my customer and my clients. So I work for that purpose. Yes, I try and make a point of having a lunch break and having a tea break and things like that. And because my office is at my home, so to speak. But I am very, very disciplined in what I do in terms of my business. That's very important for entrepreneurs to understand. You must be extremely disciplined, self-disciplined. So I switch off when my customer says, boom, I'm the first on the battlefield and the last off.
Sure.
Is the way I see things.
3 books that you'd recommend for people to read?
I'm into the current books of the Physics Today, Science Today, or Business Today. I don't know if you've seen them. Very illustrative.
I haven't seen them.
They're done by the DK Publishing Group. So there's multiple authors. I can't reflect on that, but they are very illustrative. So it talks about, let's say, management, and it goes through the history of management and how far it's come, and back to the pyramid days, and then there's a leadership one, and then there's a financial one. Yeah, I'm left and right brain. I like them both. I struggle with books just the moment.
I see.
But other than that, I'm kind of, if I have to read someone, Wilbur Smith, something like that. Maybe.
Okay.
Louis L'Amour. I love the cowboy books. I've got a collection of them. I just never get to read them. Yeah. So, but mostly business books.
Lastly, what's your message to South Africans that would be watching?
Very, very, very good question. My message to South Africans is to do away with the clutter and the noise. Stop putting your baggage out there. Stop telling me how bad it's going and how negative things are. My response to that is to tell South Africans, please get doing, get working, get organizing, contribute, roll up your sleeves, contribute.
That's a
Put
nice
your contribution. It's difficult because we expect government to do it. You cannot depend on authorities to do everything.
Yeah.
You need to contribute. So stop being negative about the whole. I have freak out moments. I'm not invincible, but don't pay rent. Come back and get out of that bad. And of course, there's a lot of people going through a lot of pain and suffering, hurt right now as we speak. And my heart goes out to those people. And I really want to urge them to seek help and get assistance and talk.
Where can people reach you if they want to know more about what you're doing? And
thank you very much for the question. You obviously, I'm on social media. I mean, you just have to type in Graeme Lategan. I've even released a CD, so that's quite cool.
Really?
Yeah, you haven't done enough research. So. But everybody gets onto that one and sees me with a guitar kind of thing. I'm by no means a phenomenal musician.
Wow.
My brother and my sister-in-law, Sean and Jackie, they are phenomenal musicians, so they play. But I tongle a little bit, but you can reach me on social media, Graeme Lategan. You just type that in, and you can kind of find me on those platforms. I'm not on the younger generation. Well, nowadays it's
TikTok,
kind of thing. Although my business managers are saying get on that platform, and then my website. You can go to GL Training. I've got my own training company, www.gltraining.co.za, and then my personal site where I spend a lot of time counseling and one-on-one in terms of independent consultations, and that's just at www.graemelategan.co.za. It's and then but social media is where you find me, and let's connect.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time again. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. All the best.
Awesome.